welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And we are bringing you some Christmas-themed slasher fun straight from the cinema with Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yeah, all is calm, all is bright.
This is the 2025 remake, by the way. That is why we're straight from the cinema. No one is showing the original in the cinema.
No.
I'm not sure it's quite big enough for that.
No, and I don't think anybody was watching this in the cinema. It was the emptiest I've seen it.
For the size of a screen, I was very surprised that they gave them we were in one of the biggest screens I think at our cinema, and there was 8 people in there.
Yeah, there was 8 people. I walked in and thought it was empty.
It was depressing.
Yeah, it was a shame. The people behind us were enjoying it.
Yes, there were many tears and laughs and much enjoying of popcorn in my ear.
Yes. Happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
It was so it's an interesting experience. So this is our spoiler-free reactions to Silent Night, Deadly Night, and we will bring you a spoiler-filled reaction later in the week.
Yeah, we will. We'll be dropping that on Monday. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review so you get it as soon as it drops. Now, I don't know, you haven't watched all of the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, have you?
I've watched a third of it.
You've watched a third of it, and you've watched the weird third of it before it gets into
I've watched it before there's actually any slasher part to it, apart from the opening, murder, rapey kind of scene in the beginning. So I only really got to see one kill and a hell of a punch into Santa. The kid just whacked Santa out in the original film. And then followed by the weirdness of this slightly dark and weird kind of opening in the original, that's then followed by a sitcom opening of a sitcom musical where a boy gets a job at a toy shop and has hijinks.
Yes, it's very hijinks heavy. So I wasn't sure what to expect with this film. I was wondering whether it was going to be kind of a straight retelling of the film, but it's kind of its own monster a little bit.
Yeah,
I
got the feeling from what I do know of the original film that this was kind of its own thing. We've still got someone dressed as Santa. We've still got an axe.
Yeah,
but we've mainly. I'm not certain on this, but I'm feeling that a lot of the idea of the motivations behind this is very different than the.
Yes,
and generally the story is pretty different.
Yeah, it's quite different. The original, which we may or may not cover, I'll put it out there, peek behind the curtain, time allowing, we may cover it. It's an odd film, but it's very much it's very straightforward. This kind of plays slightly with him. He's clearly a villain, the main character, but it's kind of very interesting, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when we talked about the original, me having not finished seeing it, you said the one thing about the original you said is that there's not really a protagonist in the original film.
No.
It's kind of just a guy that goes around and kills people,
Yeah, basically.
At a certain point, you're just following the killer, but there's not really necessarily someone to root for. It's more the idea, root for the killer, because that's the fun part of these films. And I guess in a way this one has it, but it also plays kind of the antagonist, protagonist, kind of a blend, I guess is what we can say without too much of a giveaway of what's going on here. It kind of plays with your expectations as to a little bit for a while as to who is this Billy character and what is he? Why is he doing these things and why is this? Is he just a straight up serial killer, or is there more to it? I guess.
Yeah, I like that they played with your expectations there, particularly because I watched the original film today. It did I did have it very fresh in my mind to compare it to, and I think one strength of the film was it did play with your expectations a little bit. It didn't just do a straight retread of something, which is what I expected. And I liked the, spoiler free, so trying not to give away the twist, trying not to give away that sort of stuff. I like that it kind of went its own way a little bit. It was very interestingly told. It did hit me very much as a rather independent film. It feels like it would be a straight onto Shudder kind of film as opposed to a theatrical release, which is rather strange because there's moments where you have like the main beats of the story, but then it will go into this kind of like grindhousey element. You know what I mean?
It does have, like, I mean, I think the main thing here is that this is like when any film has about what looked like about 8 different production companies behind it, as in like they needed lots of different sources to get money. I believe this film was like slightly a Kickstarter kind of one. Someone started it up, then it didn't quite make it, then it got revived and brought back again, and then this time it's made it, but with the backing of like Bloody Disgusting and things like that, like have helped push it through the game. And it has that, you're right, it has that kind of low budget kind of Shudder feel. Like it is kind of certain that you're like, this would be, you wouldn't be surprised to see that on there. I think maybe the only thing, the difference between that and something like that release is the fact that this is an IP that some people know fairly well. I think the Christmas element might be another thing, as we've not got a huge array of Christmas horrors, so I think they might have thought that maybe they've got enough of a market to kind of maybe get a few people over the holidays to go, fuck it, I want a Christmas slasher, you know what I mean?
Those people who aren't holding out for Anaconda, which is coming to you on Boxing Day. Remember?
If you're holding out for Jack Black and Paul Rudd to give you Anaconda,
they will give you their Anaconda.
And it's that kind of low budget thing, which is the only thing I think at times where I actually think in this film I think there was quite a few like really quite good ideas of how to take something, and I think there were some things that were played out that I'm not saying were like fully original, but they felt fresh enough that I almost wished that in some parts that I was like, I feel like if someone had taken the ideas of this script but been able to apply it to a bigger production company that might have maybe tweaked a few things and kind of brought it, that this might have been, if this had been through Blumhouse or something like that, I feel like this idea could have been pushed to a slightly stronger level, but because it is lower budget, you've got to kind of accept for what it is. And that is kind of that's the one thing I'd say, like with this being a spoiler free for people who are thinking about going to see it, it is a lower budget, but then again it is produced by, as it puts all over it, Terrifier, things like that. If you think maybe to the first Terrifier, that kind of slight tone, it's better made than the first Terrifier. By the way, it looked like it in terms of the actual, like the way the film looks, the cinematography, the styling, even the way the actors do. We're not talking that low, as in the shitty acting of the original Terrifier film, or maybe the sequels as well, actually. But it's got better acting, but there is still a slight element of almost like, I guess when you have a slightly bigger studio and things, you have a lot of people with an eye in it that kind of go, or maybe tweak that a little bit, or maybe that part doesn't work, or maybe that special effect is a bit odd for mainstream, or things like that.
And also those certain moments that are like, this feels like it's come out of nowhere. It feels very weird. Like there was the one particular moment that stood out to me was, and I think it's been in the trailers, and I think they're Bloody Disgusting put it onto the website, on the website, onto their Instagram, was the Nazi kind of massacre,
Oh yeah, I did. I wasn't aware of that part, so I thought, I was like, oh shit.
They put it up onto their Instagram the other day. So I knew about it, but I didn't know how it was going to fit into the story. I didn't know how it was going to happen at all. And it felt like it just came out of nowhere.
It did. I think slightly purposefully. It's meant to be like a kind of like, what the fuck.
It was a bit like, what the fuck.
What is that? And I think it's one of the things that, like, I thought that part was quite fun.
Oh, it was fun.
And it played that, and there is an element with the deaths in this film that are fun. But the weird thing is that that's one of the things with it, is a tonal thing of like, sometimes it feels more like a kind of like it's even though it's kind of, I guess, has a slight ridiculousness to it, it also has a kind of element of like, are we kind of I'm trying to think how to describe it. Are we not sure whether we should just go balls to the wall with this and just be a bit of a crazy film, or should we take it seriously? And there's an element of this where they almost want to have, like, I guess, the crazy slashiness of the original of just killing people.
Yeah.
But then they also want to have more of a story and an actual narrative maybe than the original, and they're trying to blend these two things into having almost like an actual story while also having a Santa that kills people. And it's the tonal at times that kind of, like the Nazi thing, kind of feels like that doesn't quite match the scenes that have just followed before it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's the bit that kind of, it's almost like the Santa element of it, like almost is the part that whenever he's in Santa, it's almost like could almost be a slightly different film than the rest of the film is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of element to it, I think.
Yeah, I think that was one thing. Very kind of like tonally a bit in both lanes, you know, like,
yeah.
Is this got to be kind of like a really ridiculous, really gory, kind of fun film?
Yeah.
Or is this got to be, I'm not going to say like a serious film, because it's not, but is it got to be a slightly bit like, a bit darker and a bit more like narrative focused? Because they kind of like pepper in this stuff about the Snatcher, you know?
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's kind of not really enough in it. So there's moments where like the narrative happens and you're kind of like, is this like the overarching story?
Yeah, the Snatcher is someone who's abducting children, basically.
Yeah.
I know Snatcher's pretty obviously, but there's a character, so there's another kind of there's almost other murderous elements in this film than just Billy, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Than Billy as a Santa killer. So they've kind of blended multiple kind of things in here. So you're kind of wondering, is there more than one antagonist? Is there more than one element here? But some of them are not quite as built up enough to feel like they are more than just a kind of side bit.
Yeah.
Like a bit that pops up and then isn't quite enough to feel like that's like a big moment kind of thing. I guess a kind of a third act kind of element, I guess, here, which doesn't maybe feel quite as like earned enough to get to that point in the story.
I'd agree with you on that. I thought the performances were pretty decent, you know.
Yeah.
I liked Rohan Campbell.
I thought Rohan Campbell was really
good lad. Ruby Modeline?
Yeah. She was very good.
Yeah, she was good.
They had like chemistry. They made an interesting, and they both have we've got a kind of a slight schizophrenic element there. Not saying schizophrenic, but there's that element that's kind of played into it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's different than that, but I don't want to say it because it's a spoiler.
Of course.
But there's an element in there that plays with both her, but also her, the female like protagonist, I guess, has an element of like her own just kind of mental issues that she's kind of dealing with, that creates this kind of odd kind of bond. I guess you had like there is the odd kind of in my head that was going through of having like two damaged people, which again kind of in my head went Halloween Ends because of Rohan Campbell, because it has two people that are damaged. But this, I'm not going to lie, that damaged element is better done in this film than it was in Halloween Ends.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you know? There was a kind of like, you're not really that bad, but you're playing really up to it in Halloween Ends, whereas in here it's actually quite like, because we talked about I said about Rohan Campbell before that I feel like he's got a bit of a, sadly for him, he's ended up in several like divisive kind of films.
Yes.
That of like The Monkey he was in, but he was quite a divisive character especially, but the film itself didn't end up being like out to everyone's taste anyway.
No, I think we did cover that, and I think I realised it was Rohan Campbell during the episode. I didn't know it was him, and I think I was like, I don't think I was that big on that character.
Yeah. And then obviously you've got him as Corey Cunningham in Halloween Ends, which is the main. We thought we knew him from something else, but we don't.
No, we don't.
We don't watch the Hardy Boys.
No, we don't, unfortunately.
but that was it, because we're both talking about Halloween Ends recently, that like we've both revisited and realised that as its own thing, we don't mind it too much.
No.
it's still like as a Halloween thing, it's still disappointing to many elements. But as its own thing, it's not bad. And the one thing I can definitely say though is that Rohan Campbell is, and I think I said that even originally, he was never the problem.
No,
he was actually a pretty strong actor. There were just elements that just didn't work for him. And I'd say, to be honest, out of all the things he's had a chance to be in, this probably gives him the best service of any of the ones he's been in.
I think he was good at it.
Yeah, I thought he was really good, and generally, I mean, this is because this is quite. There's not too much here to the narrative here, so there's not too many elements we can jump about with really here without basically going into the deaths. There is a range of kind of interesting deaths.
Yeah, the deaths are good.
It has some cool ones. I will say, if you're going into it thinking you're getting Terrifier style deaths, because that's the way they're sold in the trailer.
It is, isn't it?
It's not that level of death.
No.
They are not like fully like. I'm not saying there's not a few like decent kind of brutal scenes and brutal like practical effects and stuff. But we're not talking about literally seeing like skin ripped away or gratuitous levels of gore and violence. Like for me, it was a good level of violence, and it played pretty well. But in my head, it was the one thing that I don't want to feel like it was a letdown in that way. But it was sold as if it was a higher level of gore than it actually was.
Yeah, it's sold. And I guess that comes in with the Terrifier connection.
Yeah.
You're kind of thinking, oh, this has got to be fucking really brutal.
Well, the trailer was basically all just like seeing him attacking people and blood splattering without showing it, which they wouldn't show in the trailer.
No.
And then it just kept saying, from the studio that brought you Terrifier, the producers of Terrifier. So
yeah,
they're obviously trying to get that audience who've just did quite good box office numbers for Terrifier 3. They're trying to get those people in to see this. And just say, like, if you're expecting to see someone basically turned into like a human puppet after their skin's been pulled apart and stuff, you're not getting that.
No, not anywhere near it. It was enjoyable level of gore.
No, it was a fun level of gore without being to the point where you're just like, I'm kind of over this now.
Yeah, but I don't know if there were any particular like gross out deaths. There were some good deaths.
Yeah,
but I don't know if there were any that were kind of like, oh, this is a memorable death. This is really stand out.
Yeah. That's the thing. There's a lot of death in the film.
Yeah, there's a good amount. There's a good,
and there's a few interesting scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
But the deaths and the creativity behind them, I felt that's the one thing. Like, if you're going to do something that's like specifically a Christmas themed kind of horror, it feels like there are some ways that you can play up a bit of that Christmassiness into the horror kind of element.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really... There was none of really that kind of... Like, it didn't feel like we were being overly creative with them. It felt very much like some of the deaths were mainly kind of either fight scenes or kind of simple kind of deaths that you've seen in maybe lots of other things in the same way kind of thing. Yeah. But that's not to... But at the same time, for what it is, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that part. There's a lot of stuff I really enjoyed, and there's a lot of stuff in the actual story which I can't really go into without getting spoilers, but there is actually something, an element of this film that I really liked. It's weird that the comparison, because I couldn't think of another film, was Venom. Because
I literally thought Venom as well.
There's a Venom element to this film, which I actually kind of, at first I was like, what the fuck, and then I actually kind of enjoyed.
I really enjoyed
it. And the actual idea behind the mechanics of how this horror works. This is kind of a horror, like, where it's set up something that, in a way, this is kind of a franchise that could literally just go on and on and on, in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
And they've come up with quite a clever device for that, which I think was one of the better elements, even if it has some parts of it that don't totally work, because of budget, mainly.
Yeah, and I think that's what made it kind of rise above the original for me, is I've watched the original a couple of times, but I always fall into that trap with thinking that there's more that actually happens in it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like an hour and 22 minutes, and the first like 44 minutes of it, 50 minutes, is like the weird bit where he's in an orphanage, and then he's then he's working as a stock boy, and then it happens and then you've got like 25 minutes.
That's why I was pretty certain I had actually watched about half of the film, and I was like, "What is
it's
going
about
on?"
that. Yeah.
I thought this was going to because when I saw the original film was only about an hour and 20 minutes odd, or a couple more minutes than that if you're watching the unrated version. But it was literally like I was like, "Am I still not like?" This felt like a film that was promising me basically mainly just to be like a slasher, like just going for it.
Pretty much.
And it didn't get to it. I never got to that point, so I will watch that bit later.
There were a couple of nods to the original and the original franchise, should I say as well, which are good.
Yeah.
But I think
save it for the spoiler.
But yeah, I think overall, I did enjoy it. But I think it's worth going in, like you said, it's go in expecting it to be a kind of a lower budget thing, and expect it to kind of have all the balls and trinkets of a lower budget film. So don't really expect kind of like a grand sweeping narrative.
It does clever things with the fact that it hasn't got a lot of budget. Like it does manage to pack in like basically that you get the idea of a range of deaths without necessarily always having to see them exactly but you get enough that you feel that you've kind of been told the story of like a large range of murders and things like that, to a kind of clever way that it's kind of done with that kind of grindhouse style. Grindhouse, not groundhouse.
The coffee groundhouse.
The coffee grounding house. With that grindhouse style. But it does, there is some elements of it that just feel that they are where they have to rely very much on story, and that is one of the things actually also to be is that unlike the trailer, it does, as I say, sell it like it's more graphic than it is, but also as if you're mainly just in because pretty much all the trailer was basically just show off a death after a death after a death after a death after a death, and that's not what the film is. There is actually a story, and there's actually probably more story than you're actually expecting to get. I'd almost say, there's more actual scenes of actors talking than you're probably expecting someone just in a Santa outfit to just go and kill someone, and then kill someone else, and then kill someone else,
basically.
And have a very thin breath, which could have been this, and that would have been fun. But there's actually some interesting ideas, and there are some fun elements in it, including, the Nazi scene.
Yes. Anything else to say? Because I think
that's a teetering as well we can get for now.
Well, I mean, if you do go and see Silent Night, Deadly Night, come and let us know what your thoughts on it. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMDH Podcast. As always, hit that subscribe button, leave us a lovely review, and we will see you in our spoiler-filled episode. As always, play us out, boys.